Coming up on 5 Minute News. US budget talks in stalemate, delaying infrastructure deal. All Haitian migrants gone from Texas border camp. And Thunberg joins climate rally ahead of German election. It's Saturday, September 25. I'm Anthony Davis. Joe Biden said on Friday that talks over his $3.5 trillion rebuilding plan have hit a stalemate in Congress as he made the case for his expansive effort to recast the nation's tax and spending programs and make what he sees as sweeping, overdue investments. Biden spoke at the White House as Democrats in the House and Senate are laboring to finish drafts and overcome differences between the party's centrist and moderate factions. Despite efforts by the president and congressional leaders to show progress, Biden cast the road ahead as long and potentially cumbersome, even with upcoming deadlines. "We're getting down to the hard spot here," Biden told reporters at the White House. "We're at this stalemate at the moment." The president's acknowledgement of Democrats' disagreements, and they have serious differences over taxes, health, climate change, and the ultimate price tag, contrasted with congressional leaders' more upbeat tone in recent days. During carefully chosen words, top Democrats have seemed to be trying to create a sense of momentum as House votes approach. On Friday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi predicted passage of both pillars of Biden's domestic agenda. One is a still-evolving $3.5 trillion package of social safety net and climate programs. The other, a separate $1 trillion measure financing highway, internet, and other infrastructure projects that's already passed the Senate with bipartisan support. But she did not spell out how she and her Senate counterpart, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, would resolve disagreements and distrust between their party's moderate and progressive wings that stalled both measures. And there remained confusion about the voting schedule, which will be crucial. But as lawmakers raised objections over the sweep and scope of the plan, which is to be funded by higher taxes on corporations and the wealthy, Biden said he tried to get them focused on priorities, what they can and can't live with. No migrants were left on Friday at the Texas border encampment, where almost 15,000 people, most of them Haitians, had converged just days earlier seeking asylum, local and federal officials said. It's a dramatic change from last Saturday, when the number peaked as migrants, driven by confusion over the Biden administration's policies and misinformation on social media, converged at the Del Rio border crossing. At a news conference, Del Rio Mayor Bruno Lozano called it phenomenal news. Many face expulsion because they're not covered by protections recently extended by the Biden administration to more than 100,000 Haitian migrants already in the US, citing security concerns and social unrest in the Western Hemisphere's poorest country. The devastating 2020 earthquake forced many of them from their homeland. The United States and Mexico appeared eager to end the increasingly politicized humanitarian situation that prompted the resignation of the U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti and widespread outrage after images emerged of border agents maneuvering their horses to forcibly block and move migrants. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said about 2,000 Haitians have been rapidly expelled on 17 flights since Sunday, and more could be expelled in coming days under pandemic powers that deny people the chance to seek asylum. He said the US has allowed about 12,400 to enter the country, at least temporarily, while they make claims before an immigration judge to stay in the country under the asylum laws or for some other legal reason. They would ultimately be denied and would be subject to removal. Tens of thousands of environmental activists staged a rally outside Germany's parliament on Friday, 2 days before the country holds a national election, to demand that politicians take stronger action to curb climate change. The protest outside the Reichstag in Berlin was part of a string of rallies around the world, from Japan, India, and Nigeria to Greece, Italy, and Britain, amid dire warnings that the planet faces dangerous temperature rises unless greenhouse gas emissions are cut sharply in the coming years. Across Germany alone, hundreds of thousands of marchers joined similar protests in several cities and towns. The idea for a global climate strike was inspired by teenage Swedish activist Greta Thunberg's solo protest in Stockholm 3 years ago. It snowballed into a mass movement until the coronavirus pandemic put a stop to large gatherings. Activists have only recently started staging smaller protests again. 18-year-old Thunberg addressed the Berlin rally from a stage, telling the crowd that voting is important but must be coupled with protests that put politicians under constant pressure. "We can still turn this around," she said to Cheers. "We demand change, and we are the change." Thunberg and prominent German climate activist Luisa Neubauer accused politicians of falling short, saying the programs of the main parties weren't far-reaching enough to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the more ambitious limit in the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.